country where I was live streaming, and it was really cool, right? Like that, if I go on vacation or whatever, I've never done this, but I could see the point for, as an adult, to share, I'm on top of this mountain, I'm going skiing, right? Like that guy, I'm sharing my experience with other people that are following me. I see the appeal to that, but everything from tragic things to mundane things, live and public. And if you're paying attention to the news, it's used for, unfortunately, mundane, boring things and very tragic things, from rape to murder, broadcasted live. All the things we just talked about, developmental needs, self-body, social currency, the cyberbullying, obviously, is ripe, okay? And I have lots of kids who tell me they love it because if they're not at a sleepover, they could sort of participate. They're there, like virtually on the screen, until the people go off screen and then they hear their name being whispered and, and then it just becomes, oh, well, I'm not really there. I'm there and I'm not, which again, I don't have a reference point to that. When I was 13, that wasn't something that I ever experienced. And now this generation is. Okay? Come on. All right, well, very good. This is a savvy group, but it is a calculator. It is a working calculator, not the working calculator that comes pre-installed on your phone, however. This is a private photo vault that if you put in 2 plus 2, you'll get 4. Okay, it's a working calculator. But if you put in your code, whoever sets it up, the child or the adult, this was made for adults, right? Here, I made a little video for you so you could see. This is my phone. I installed this specifically for this. I don't typically have this on my phone, but you can see my little selfie. You put in the code and it pops up with my private selfie album. Obviously, ripe for sexting scandals. It becomes a very tragic, confusing legal landscape. And I say tragic because there's victims here. This is mostly child pornography. And even if it's a picture of yourself and you're a 15-year-old, you're holding child pornography, you send it to someone else, you're, forgot the word, transmitting, you're distributing, that's the word, distributing child pornography. It becomes a very difficult gray landscape to navigate. And unfortunately, it's out there. Yep? It looks like a calculator, and it's not the calculator that comes pre-installed on your phone. And chances are none of your kids and teenagers have this. But I'm making you aware because they could. So it looks like a calculator, the same icon basically as what you have pre-installed. You click on it, and it basically is hiding photos and videos. And I'm sure there's others too that would hide other things too. This is the one that I'm more concerned about because it's the videos and the photos that are inappropriate. Yeah, it's a working calculator. No, you wouldn't know. And some of them are advanced where if a parent picks it up and puts in the wrong code, it actually takes a picture. So then when the user comes back to it, they could see who is on their phone.
Teenagers are not developing steps. So how is it allowed that these adults are creating these apps that are specifically ruining our children's childhood?
Because they're saying it's for progress. That's what he said.
But they clearly know it's not. I mean, obviously we all know that.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I know there's no answer to that right now.
No, hang on. There's plenty of adults who use this type of app for whatever nefarious reasons they want. It's an adult app, but no one's enforcing this. That's the issue. No one's regulating, just like Shelley Long said at the beginning. No one's regulating this environment. So if your child at whatever age hears about some app on the back of the bus, it's on their phone, right? So that's the issue. It's how do we educate our kids that this stuff is out there in small doses, and then have some type of system in place where we as the parents know what's going on our kid's phone. And I'm going to answer this in a few minutes. Okay, please.
Do you know if there's a fee associated to the app? Because I know that I have everything linked to my iCloud.
Very good. We're going to talk about that in a minute. No.
You can check.
No, there's no fee. You could see if it was downloaded. If you go into the store, there'll be a little cloud, if that particular thing was downloaded. But there's so many that the chances are that you would find that one is slim. But if you want to know if your child or you or your husband or wife have it, you go in, if this is iPhone only, what I'm about to show you. A lot of what I'm going to talk about on the tech side is iPhone and Apple products, not because I work for Apple. I'd like to, so if someone's watching or if anybody knows anybody, please let me know. But that's what most families still have and want. So I focus on Apple products. So if you go into settings, you scroll up right on that front screen of settings, all of the third-party apps that you have on your phone that you've downloaded on purpose are listed there. So this calculator right there is the Photo Vault. The calculator that comes pre-installed would not be there because that came on the phone. So that is the Photo Vault that I had on my iPad or whatever, okay? There is research that says when you're out in nature, or even just looking at pictures of nature is a little light, it actually lowers your blood pressure and helps you relax. So after, I'm going to kind of have some of these pictures sprinkled in after some particularly anxiety-provoking topics. Take it down a notch. We're okay, all right? You know, it's a little dark, but, you know, anybody like butterflies? Okay, all right, we're good. Everybody still awake? All right, it's a lot of information, I know. All right, moving on. Still didn't name that app, but we're going to start moving past that now. Common Sense Media, it is an app and a website. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. Common Sense Media is a well-researched, well-funded, really brilliant guys out of Stanford. Trusted reviews on apps, movies, anything, pretty much anything you could think of for your kids. commonsensemedia.org. Very popular a couple years ago when the original Deadpool came out, which, anybody see Deadpool? Not your typical superhero movie, but I had all these 8 and 9-year-olds really excited to see Deadpool. And it's the most raunchy rated R comedy. I guess he's a superhero also, but that's almost besides the fact. It's a raunchy rated R comedy. And so I would send them out into the waiting room with their parent, with their phone, and just encourage the parent to look it up. Again, not my call if you want to take your 9-year-old to see Deadpool, but at least educate yourself. So again, go on with your kids. You can read it first, but take a look at what Common Sense Media says before jumping in, especially the apps. You hear about Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite and Apex Legends. It gives you a guide of what these things are. And you don't have to follow it to a T, but it's a really good starting point for most parents, especially digital parenting pioneers, as we are. At least I think most of us are. 13 Reasons Why is the other example I often use here. I learned about 13 Reasons Why, which, by the way, it's in its 2nd season on Netflix. If some of you were nodding. It's all about suicide. It's all about this girl who committed suicide, and it's reasons why. And it has almost instructions on how to commit suicide in different ways. There's rape scenes. Again, clearly it's meant for older teenagers or adults, not for little kids. I first learned about 13 Reasons Why from parents of 2 different families, same week, of the sibling, younger sibling of my patient. I think it was like an 8 and 10-year-old girls, watched the entire season up in their rooms on their iPad alone, and understandably got freaked out. That's how I first learned about it. So again, be aware of what your kids are doing, and check out Common Sense Media, because I think will help give digital immigrant, digital parenting pioneers, and even digital native parents, because it's impossible to keep up information to be able to safeguard and teach our kids. Okay? Past this. It really helps with the blurring of the boundaries on the internet and the digital world, because again, YouTube, all of these apps, it's hard to know who is the target audience. Who is this video meant for? Who is this app meant for? Chances are it's not for your 5-year-old or 10-year-old. Chances are it's for a much older audience. And Common Sense Media will give you some, at least, gauge to go on. Speaking of blurring of the boundaries, I'm not going to take too much time on Fortnite, but it is this craze, hundreds of millions of downloads, players. So much, in fact, that I was on Good Morning America in September because I created a parent support group for Fortnite on that's not a joke, on Facebook, ironically, where I think we are just shy of 1,500 families from literally around the world at this point. And it's been an amazing experience on Facebook. I know Facebook gets a lot of flack, and they deserve it. Sorry, they do. But this, in other communities on Facebook, it's really an amazing opportunity to see different cultures and how they're all struggling with the same challenge of how do we manage this. Fortnite is brilliantly designed to pull our attention, to pull our kids' attention. There's this unboxing theory that is all over the internet, where what drives our human behavior is almost like on Christmas morning or on your birthday, if you have a wrapped present on your lap and you're about to open it, and that excitement and that anticipation that you might feel of, what am I about to get, right? Can you almost picture that? That's what the internet is. And every turn you're about, what is this? Or this treasure chest is going to open up. What did I get? Or Candy Crush, or whatever the thing is. Fortnite and all these games have all these ammo crates and chests and llamas dropping down, and it's all about what is the next cool thing that I'm going to get. And they're brilliant because every couple of weeks they come out with all these updates, and now we have jetpacks and we have this ball that goes around, and they keep it novel, they keep it fun, and our kids without a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which is the braking system, are just pulled in. And so originally what I created was I wanted to educate parents so when they're setting limits on the app, on the game, that the limits made sense to the game. Because if you're a digital parenting pioneer and you've grew up playing some video games or at least around video games, the natural question is, how much longer are you playing? Dinner's ready, how much longer? And these games, kids will look at you and be honest and say, I don't know. Because they don't know. It's a live game. They're playing with real people, hopefully that they know, which is, again, blurring of the boundaries. Often they're playing with people from school, from their baseball team, from camp, from wherever, and it's impossible to know how much longer. So that question misses the mark. So my first tip in this group was to ask how many players are left. Because the original Fortnite game was based on a battle royale, which means, I'm being really brief here, I'm trying, out of 100 people, each game starts with 100 people, you're trying to be the last man standing, or the last team standing, because you can play in teams also. But if you're playing solo, you're trying to be the last man standing. So out of 100, if you look at that number, I don't know if you could see it, but I circled it, that says 42. So that's sort of the middle of the game. So I'm trying to equip parents to have some basic understanding of the game, so when they're setting limits, it makes sense and it's reasonable. And you're not just saying, oh, it's my house, my rules, and because then don't let them play. But if you're going to let your kid play, at least have some way of setting limits and rules that make sense so it's enforceable. Because otherwise, it just creates more battles. So if there's 80 people left, that means they just started, pretty much. They've only been playing for a few minutes, because it drops down pretty quickly from 100 to about 80. If there's 10 people left, I would slowly step out of the room, make sure they know, maybe write it on a Post-it note, when this game is over, come to dinner. Because it's the final battle, it's very intense, a lot of people shooting at them. And it's going to be ending soon because the way the game is set up, it's a battle royale, but there's also this storm that pushes all the remaining players together, closer. So it is going to end quickly because everyone is basically like, everyone's on the same screen now, opposed to all over this island, which, so again, as the game goes on, everyone is pushed closer together. I see some of you glazing over, so I'm going to move on. Please.
What age would you say that is appropriate to start to play Fortnite? I'm asking this because I have a second grader at home, and I think it's too violent to his age. It's not appropriate. But he says to me, I'm the only one in my class, and blah, blah, blah.
He might be. So my two-part answer, I'm going to try not to hedge too much here because I don't have an answer, but your judgment that it's too violent for your second grader is all you really need. At the same time, it is younger and younger and younger. Again, it is violent, it is cartoonish, There is teamwork. I could give you the whole thing where there is some positives to this game. I'm not negative on this. But with a 7, 8-year-old, I would say that that is on the young end. There's plenty of kids in that age playing and younger. Kindergartners are playing. But certainly not in my recommendation.
Yeah.
Again, you get into that 9, 10, and up range, there's sort of this sweet spot right now where they, in my, again, not my judgment, but if you are inclined to let them play a violent video game with shooting, because it is, don't make no mistake, it's shooting, it's a shooting game. It's a third-person shooter game, meaning you could see the back of your head. First-person shooter, you only see your arm in the gun. So it's a third-person shooter, and you're shooting people. There's no blood, but in that range, that's when most of the people, at least that I know, are playing, in that 10 to 11, 12-year-old range. You get into 12, 13, plenty of them are still playing, but that's when they start to move on to more violent video games. So, again, if you're the type of parent that's going to allow your child to play this type of game, Fortnite is not a bad place to start, but it is a violent video game. Okay? I don't know if I answered your question, but...
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Name that app. No, okay, so this is my first phone. This hung in my kitchen. I actually found this on the internet. It's not my real phone, but it looked just like that. Eventually, my mom got one of those long cords that I was able to wrap around into the dining room so I could have some privacy when I wanted it. But that was my first phone, okay? Today's phones are anything but a phone, as I said. They're pocket-sized computers with amazing things, more than I could fit on this slide. But from GPS to typing, cameras, music, video games, books, anything you could think of, they're all-in-one devices. And so obviously that has a cost. If you're handing your child an adult, all-in-one device, all-in-one device, that's gonna, you gotta be aware of that. You're inviting them into this digital world. And there's cost, right? So this was Dr. Twenge out in San Diego. I'm going to go through this quickly because I'm a little bit behind here. But she wrote this whole book. I was on NPR with her a couple of years ago, where a lot of the research that a lot of these tech companies are now using, this correlation that I referred to earlier of the increased depression and anxiety is based on her research. A couple years ago when Apple said, oh, we're going to come out with new stuff, their investors wrote a letter, I don't know if you remember that. It was based on her research, which is basically what she was showing with numbers, is that the rates of teen depression and suicide have skyrocketed since 2011. If you think about 2011, what was going on then, that's when, the iPads and the iPhones really started to take over. It's been around for about 10 years now. The iPhone just came out, it's 10 years. So she found that teens are less likely to go outside, so have a driver's license, drink alcohol, be sexually active. So they're more sheltered in some ways, but more fragile. And so, she concluded they're scared. The devices, are extending their childhoods and isolating them from true human interaction. And there's a cost. Right? They're both physically the safest generation, the most mentally fragile. And I see it every day in my office, and it's sad.
What's the name of the doctor who did the research?
Jean Twenge, Twenge, out of San Diego, and her book is iGen. Okay. Anyway, go through this quickly. If you want some of these stats, you could email me later. I'm happy to send it off to you. I want to get to the other section. So one piece here, screen time may be replacing other activities. I don't know about you all, but I see this every day in my office and even in my family, where there's this pull to be on the screen and less about the music instrument, less about the sports, less about other interests. In this childhood time, adolescence, it's a time of expanding interests. And then when you're old, then it gets more narrow. And what's happening now is there's some real experts on Fortnite, maybe Apex Legends, it's more narrow. And so that's part of my concern, that I want to, set limits in a way where we're encouraging our kids, forcing our kids in some ways, forcing the dialogue, forcing them off the screen in order to get more screen. You do these things, you'll get your screen time. Because again, I would love to say with these young kids, and I know this is controversial, it's really not healthy for them to be on these screens at all. I could say that, and I'm confident. But I can't say that because that's not reality, in my experience, in my opinion. Okay? And we could debate this. But in my opinion, and what I see in reality, most families, you all are a selective group. You chose to be here tonight and spend 2 hours with me tonight. Thank you. Most families are not here. I don't know how large this school is, but it's more than you all in terms of this whole community. Most families that I come in contact with around the country do almost nothing. And so therefore our kids are really running the show. And therefore the concerns go up. Let's skip that too. All right, so what do we do? Now that you guys are all shell-shocked and freaked out. I'm going to start off with contracting. I'm going to talk about a couple of Apple-only solutions and why I'm recommending it. I'm going to really try to focus on the why. And then I'll talk about my recommendations and digital access boxes. Communication is the foundation. Everything I'm talking about here hopefully will set things up in a way where you're forcing the dialogue, parent-child dialogue. You want to force it. Because if you don't force it, chances are your kids aren't going to come to you because they want their screen time because their friends have it. All my friends are, I'm the last one. I hear that every day. My daughter was the last one to get a phone. No, she wasn't. But she was one of the last. All right, so you have a copy in that reference sheet of a sample contract for a young kid. I start there because you could even do clip art with a really young kid. You want a reference point to be able to say, you remember when you were little, we had that piece of paper and there were some rules that we weren't sending silly pictures or whatever the basic rules are. The phone is kept downstairs, basic rules. You want to start young, so you're giving them a roadmap for more digital access. As I said earlier, as they change their behavior and they show you that they could manage it as they get older, then they get more access. And there's a limit to that because you might say, I have a very mature child and they're asking me to play Call of Duty, which is a really violent video game with blood and everything. But he's so mature that, whatever. You might say, okay, there's a parallel here to driving a car. That's a state-run, regulated for years, well-documented, well-funded. You have to be, I don't know about in New York, when I grew up 16, I got a permit. Then I had to go through all these state-regulated, supervised hours of practice. And internet, there's no such thing. There is no regulation. There is no, we could debate whether that's good or bad, but there is no set of guidelines. So it's up to us as parents to set that up. Please.
Sorry, your recommendations for when they should have a phone? What age?
That is the million-dollar question.
Recommendation.
I can't give you a recommendation. I can give you the average age is 11 in this country, and I think it's getting younger. The reason I can't give you an answer, and I'm going to try to be brief, is that most families that I know, even if your young child doesn't have a phone with their own phone number, they're pretty much doing every single thing that they would do with a phone on another device, younger. So getting the phone is really important so they have data everywhere they go, mostly to play video games and be on social media. So my answer to you would be when you decide, because you're coming home late from a sports practice or whatever, that you want to be able to either track them to see where they are, which we could talk about, or to be able to call them to be picked up when there's a need in your particular family that justifies them having a phone number. To me, that is what triggers it. Because otherwise, they have, unless, again, maybe I'm wrong, but in most families, there's an old iPhone, there's an iPad, there's a Chromebook, there's something in most families, at least for the families that are looking to get their child a phone. They have some type of device and their child, as long as there's Wi-Fi and there's hotspots everywhere now, they pretty much have a phone, depending on the device. Did I hedge too badly there?
No.
Okay.
We have a 17-year-old, she has one, but the 9 and the 10-year-old do not have phones. Not yet.
My
Not yet.
Not yet.
Right. So again, my 15-year-old has one. She got it in 7th grade. My 11-year-old, not yet. But he has my old iPhone, and on Wi-Fi, he basically has a phone in the house and wherever he takes it, when he takes it.
Now, you said that there's an age, like age 13 is that for all social media?
Yep. Every inch of the internet, if they're collecting data, it's a marketing law.
But what, like Snapchat,
Yep.
that would be 13?
Yep, they're collecting data. So, and again, you have to fill something out when you set up a log, and you have to put a birth date in. And if you put a birth date under 13, I think it kicks it back to you. So most kids are lying. Okay. So I wrote a whole journal article on this. You can look it up. If you just put my name in and five keys to a family rules contract, that's what it looks like. But here are basically the 5 keys I'm going to roll through relatively quickly. I told you, I packed these 2 hours with information. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. And stop me if you have questions. Yeah, please.
I just read the contract, and I don't see like, so it is lots of welcoming, right? Welcoming for kids.
It's less welcoming?
It's like, no, it is welcoming. It's like trust us, come to us,
Mhm.
whatever. So it's good. It's like just such a safe harbor between you and the kid.
Yeah.
I'm really interested, actually, because we are psychologists. We are talking about the age, and I'm talking about what is the average hour, because especially for Fortnite, because it deals with temper and rage and everything. So what is the average? Because people say, you can't stay long. What is long? Everything is so subjective.
So my answer would be based on how your child is handling it. So if he's having a tantrum after 2 hours, I'm going to say that's too long. I'm going to say if he's having a tantrum after 1 hour, because it's designed to pull for that tantrum. There is a level of addiction, tolerance, I need more, withdrawal, it's taken away from me. Again, we could talk about addiction theory here, but it is a behavioral addiction, at least in terms of symptoms. So therefore, how your child is handling it should dictate how long he can play or she can play within some limit. So I can't give you a solid number there, but generally speaking, depending on the age of your kid, I would keep it in that 1 to 2 hours range. And I have worked with lots of families where they're very strict during the week, and then on the weekends, it's a free-for-all, and the kids are playing 9, 10 hours. And it's disastrous for most families. I don't want to say every family. Sometimes I guess it works. But so that's my answer. It really depends on what they're demonstrating. And teaching your child at the beginning to rope them in to learn how to regulate. For them, when they sit down to play, have a clock somewhere in front of them. What time is it? Have them. I have some kids. I have a whole worksheet that I share in my group on Facebook, where what time did you go on? What time did you go off? Do the math on that. How long were you on? Not as a way of setting a limit, for them to be aware. Again, part of regulation is a level of mindfulness and being aware, and that's what I'm going for. Okay.
You talked about things like missing out or depression and some of these things. So there are some preventive measures like limiting the number of hours which they can spend. But are there early signs of these things which we should watch out for and then take corrective actions?
Sure. So the question is, what are some early signs or symptoms that you might see if there's a problem emerging? Great question. So again, I could spend a whole hour just on that. This is enough for like a full college course in here. So I want to be respectful of your time as we have about a half an hour left. So my short answer is any significant changes in their behavior, changes in sleep. They're getting up, sneaking down to play in the middle of the night. That's a problem. Change in appetite, change in their food intake. They look gaunt. They look they're preoccupied, where all they talk about is that game or that social media app or feeling left out. Something that is significantly different, a change, is what is my short answer to you. Anything that looks different. And having that dialogue going where you're paying attention to that. You're aware, because hopefully you're talking to them about it. Okay? So here are my 5 keys. I've been saying this all night. Hang on one second. It's an adult device. needs to be set up as such. Okay, you're inviting them into the digital world. Don't forget that. Guidelines about where and when the device can be used. I'm talking basics here. Timing, dinner time, breakfast, excuse me, bedtimes. Is it kept downstairs? What about in the car? If you're the parent, hopefully none of you text and drive, obviously, right? But if you're the parent that's checking Facebook or texting at every stoplight, your kid's in the back seat or next to you watching you. They learned it by watching us. Remember that commercial from the 80s? I learned it by watching you. They are learning by watching us. So again, as some of you that raised your hands with middle schoolers, high schoolers, that are going to be learning to drive or already driving, I know that's incredibly scary from a parent's point of view. Very exciting from the kid's point of view, hopefully. But you don't want them to think it's okay that, oh, it's okay, I'm at a stoplight so I can check my phone. You really don't want that. So be aware of what you're modeling. So having that written out into the contract depending on the age of the kid. You don't want the contract to be overly scary. That's why it is written, at least the sample I gave you is written in a more welcoming way, because this is something you are welcoming them. You're the one in charge. You're the parent. You're inviting them into this world. And by the way, you have a contract with AT&T or Verizon or whoever your cell phone provider is. So they're like subleasing that contract. So if they give you, like, they push it back, why do I have to sign a contract? You easily could say, hey, this is no big deal. I have a contract. I had to sign it. You know, I don't know if you read the terms of service, but if you break that terms of service, you do something inappropriate with your phone, you could easily lose your service. Chances are that would never happen, but it's the same thing. So they're younger. They're subleasing it from you. They're a child. They're a teenager. So you have certain rules that you're requiring them to follow in order for them to have access. It's contingent. If, then. When, then. Okay? All passwords are private and shared with parents, not because you're going to ambush them and trap them and sneak and constantly snoop. Don't do that. Let me be very clear. That is not going to help anything. But I want you to, in my opinion, you should have access because people, humans, kids too, who know they're being supervised, behave differently. That's why there's cameras everywhere now. Because when you're being watched and recorded potentially, hopefully, most of us behave differently. If you know no one's watching you, not each one of you, but as a society, we behave differently. So use that theory, and just the fact that they know you can go on their phone and you might check once in a while and go out of your way once in a while. But again, you should be never talking to them about what you see unless there's something really concerning, which hopefully would be very rare. But you're not going to them, what did Sally mean by, unless there's a concern there. But even then, keep it brief, and unless there's a concern, I would really be in the backdrop, okay? But it's a safety thing, okay? Required permission to download. I'm going to show you this in a second. It is warm in here. I'm right next to this fan, too. Required permission to download is so important. And I'm going to show you in a second through family sharing how to set this up where everything that is downloaded on your phone, I got it, thank you. Everything that is downloaded on your phone, on their phone, you should be approving of. And with Apple, it's simple to do. You just have to turn it on, okay? But this way you're aware, even if it's free, anything that they're downloading, you've at least had some eyes on, and hopefully they talk to you about it. Remember, forcing the dialogue. And then again, act older, you're going to be treated older. That's my most basic line. As they are changing their behavior and showing you they can handle more, you're giving them more access. That's why it's a roadmap for more digital access. Okay? You did have a quick question?
Yeah, I had a question. When you see that, because I saw that, addictive, obsessive behavior report night.
Yeah.
And I took it away. I totally undownloaded it. Asked a couple times for it. If I were to introduce that back, what's a good way to do something like that? Like once you've taken something away, maybe they've earned it back, whether it's, Roblox or even tablet itself, like that's a bargaining chip.
Yeah. So I would focus that decision on a discussion you're having with them, based on changes that you've seen that you could point to. I like the way you did this. I love how, when the movie was over, instead of that, or we were watching The Office, or we're watching whatever the show is, and instead of having a tantrum when I said it was over, you handled it well. You went right to bed. Point to specific behavioral changes that you liked, and then connect whatever this new access is or renewed access that you're giving them. Because ultimately, I'm sorry to say this so bluntly, but eventually you're going to want them to have these things under your supervision before they go off to college. Right? Some of this has to be we have to put this in a larger context for teenagers, because like this idea, as I said earlier, like the phone should not be in their room when they're sleeping. It shouldn't be in any of ours, unless you're on call, and you're a first responder. The phone disrupts our sleep. It does. All of us. But the reality is, when your 17-year-old, 18-year-old is going off to college, guess what? They're going to have their phone in their room. Chances are they only have one room. They're not going to keep their phone in the hallway. They're not going to keep their phone, right, in the closet or in their shoe. That's not going to happen. And so we have to teach them how to manage it, and how to turn it off, and how to use the screen time stuff that I'll show you in a second, to increase their ability to regulate. Okay? Skipping this. All right, so I'm going to go through some of the settings. The first thing I'm recommending, again, this is Apple only for now. Any Android users? A couple? Actually, quite a few. All right, so bear with me. If you have questions on Android, I'm going to point to a couple of things, but most of what I'm going to share here is Apple, because that's what most kids and teenagers still have. In a couple of years, that might change, and I'll have to redo my program if I'm still doing this, but right now it's Apple. So if you go to right under settings, that first page, and you click on your name, what you're setting up is called family sharing. And any new phone, iOS 8 and up, iOS is the operating system of the phone. They're on 12 now, okay? But so if you have a relatively new phone, update it if you haven't. What's that? If you go into the software update, it doesn't matter, because as long as you click on your name, if it looks like this, you have it updated. Because otherwise it didn't have your name like that. But anything iOS 8 and up, which has been 3 or 4 years now, so chances are you're updated. Click on that, and you're going to find where it says Set Up Family Sharing. And what you're doing here, and this in a minute, there's a little foreshadowing, this links up with what is called screen time. So it opens up something that looks like this, and it's going to invite you to accept, and then you're basically setting up all the devices in your family that are assigned to your family members, your spouse, and if you have a kid that has a device that they primarily use. So if you have a really young kid, you probably don't need to do this yet, because they're probably just using a family device. But as soon as then, again, it's younger than you probably would imagine, as soon as your child sort of has that iPad or an old iPhone that they use, and it's sort of their device, odd as that sounds if they're 8, but it does happen, you're basically assigning an Apple ID for your child. It's an iCloud ID. It'll walk you through it. It's basically, as you go through it, for every child, I don't know if you can see this, says Olivia Parker, age 6, Jimmy Parker, age 10. Those are, and I guess Meg Parker, age 14. Those are the children in this family. They all have their own Apple ID, and it's assigned to their specific device under the family sharing, under the family umbrella. Okay, Apple will walk you through this if you're not sure, but that's how it goes. And then what gets set up, you have all of these things already built in then. Everything that you purchase through iTunes, music, movies, whatever, depending on the content restrictions for their age, is shared. You don't have to rebuy anything. Shared albums on the photos, it's all seamless. Remote through the phones, it's all shared. You could check locations, which again, with young kids on Halloween and other times, it's nice to be able to see, okay, where people are. Not behind their back, make sure they're aware, but it is a helpful thing. Don't track them when they go to college, though, please. I hear this all the time. Why'd you leave the bar? Not appropriate, not healthy. Why'd you leave the library, I should say, sorry. Why are you at the bar? Sorry. The family sharing calendar is something I'm not going to take too much time on, but I want you to be aware of it. It's a great learning tool for teenagers. You put it on your phone. We're going to grandma's on Sunday night. You put it on the family calendar. It pops up seamlessly on everyone's device in the family. They have a test coming up. They learn to put it on the family calendar. I'm studying here. It's a great way to reduce some of the negative dialogue and some of the nagging that some of us parents tend to do. Get them using this family calendar. This way they're organizing themselves.
I'm actually getting not just the screen time portion of it,
Yep.
which I'm really happy that Apple
Yep.
managed that, because a few years ago, it was actually really cumbersome. to
Yep.
use, and it
It's
really
still
didn't
cumbersome,
get
but yes, huge
The problem
advancement.
I have, I'm looking at it right now, unless I'm missing something, you can't, I want to specifically target you
Okay, I'll show you.
to everything here doesn't listen.
You can. You can. I don't know if I don't know if I have a slide that will show you exactly, but yes, you can. And then most important is the ask to buy feature. That's why I'm focusing on this. Anyone who is under the age of 16, as you're setting up the family sharing, you check off this box that says ask to buy. And then anything that child or teenager wants to download, even if it's free, they need to get your permission first. And it's not like Big Brother where you're in charge of everything. It's, especially if you start young, it makes sense. And if you have an older teenager, because often that's what I get asked, again, be careful with this because you don't want to just take everything away. Be reasonable, but this way you're aware of what's going on their phone. So they don't just hear about the crazy new app in the back of the bus and then they're off and running. They have to talk to you first. So there's no way that photo sharing, the calculator app is going to be on your kid's phone or teenager's phone because you're going to be aware of what's going on there. And most importantly, you could have a dialogue about that. You could talk to them. They could talk to you. It forces that dialogue, okay? So they're not just going into a store, dropping your credit card, because most of the time your credit card is saved in the account, and saying, I'll take 3, thank you very much, because that's what's happening.
Did you just say when she turns 16, because I already have it set up with my daughter.
Great.
That it comes to my phone, okay, your daughter wants to download
Yep,
this app.
perfect, great.
When she turns 16,
I don't think it turns off automatically, but it might prompt you that at some point it probably will. I don't know. That's a good. I don't know the answer to that. Please. Sorry.
Like if the child is older, like 18,
Uh-huh.
you take the app feature off just that phone?
Yeah, for his or her phone, it would probably drop off automatically if they're 18. But there's definitely a way you can go in and uncheck it.
16 or 17, of the family share, you can just take it off certain phones?
Yes. Yeah, for each individual, because that's why the Apple ID comes in, because the settings are per device, per Apple ID, okay? If you have any questions on any of that, and even what I'm about to talk about now, tell them I sent you. This is AppleCare's number. It's free. Say you want help with iOS 12. They will walk you through this, and they speak English, and they're lovely. Use them. You've already paid for this if you have an iPhone or if you're an Apple consumer, okay? Screen time is what you just mentioned, came out in September. This was part of, in response to that iGen book, Dr. Twenge's research. They came out with something that is a huge advancement. It comes automatically, it's already built in. You go to settings, you scroll up a little bit where it says screen time, you click on that, you activate it, and again, it links up with the family sharing. So remotely from your phone, if you have an iPhone, and Google has their same version with Family Link. I don't have slides on this, but if you're Google, with very little research, you'll find this. It's called Family Link. It gives tremendous data for us as users and for our kids. How often did you pick up the phone? How long did you spend on certain apps? How long in general for the day? Right there, it gives it to you. And then, and even it says for each app, how long were you on for the day? Most used. It gives tremendous data, which helps with regulation. Hopefully all this makes sense as I've putting this all together. I'm forcing the dialogue, and I'm trying to find ways to get our kids to be more aware of what they're doing. So this is a great way, and for us to be more aware, okay? So it gives you per week, the last 7 days, what is the average, what are the apps that you're using the most. It's very, very helpful.
How did you get to the specific app? I don't see it.
That's just right on the screen, it comes up. Those are the ones that are used most.
Yeah, I'm on the same one.
Right, so then what happens, I'll try to, I don't know if I have a slide or not, but I think I do. So then with your kids on your phone, if you have the family sharing set up, I know I'm going fast here and this is overwhelming for immigrants, I get it. Links with family sharing. This is why I gave you AppleCare's number so you could follow up and get. And you have all these links, by the way, are on that reference sheet. But there's Jimmy Parker and Olivia Parker, remember? The kids. So then you can click on that, and that gives you a huge menu behind a password. You come up with a 4-digit password, okay, that they can't know, they can't guess, and you can't forget. It's a huge hassle if you forget it, okay? Last 4 of your childhood phone number, something you have ingrained in your memory. 4 digits, come up with something. And then it gives you this huge menu where you could set app limits. And this is where I think you're asking. If you go in there, there's all these categories, and and then you could just check off based on the different category. YouTube is under this, Snapchat is under this, and you could set app limits, and it actually works pretty well. It's a little glitchy. They're still working on it. Again, if anybody's out there listening at Apple, let me know. But it gives you a tremendous, it gives you a tremendous menu of content restrictions. It's less cumbersome than it used to be. It still takes a little bit of time, at least for pioneers, as like myself, the olds, to actually figure it out. But you could set all kind of different things up in here, turning things on and off, turning certain apps on and off, and setting those app limits is huge. App limits are not about cocooning our kids. It's about forcing the dialogue. So they have to come talk to us. Okay? You remember those geotagged photos, the digital file that I was talking about that's embedded in the digital file, the pictures? If you go into settings again, you go in the newer version, settings, privacy, camera, you click on privacy, and then all of the apps that use the GPS are listed there. All you have to do is go through and toggle them off. You also could just toggle off the camera at times. If you have a young kid, you could turn it on easily. You also could turn it off, because if you're giving them this all in one device, and you have a 5-year-old, you may not want him walking around taking pictures. Maybe he's not taking the most appropriate pictures. I know plenty of 5-year-olds. You give them a camera, and they're taking pictures of things you don't necessarily want pictures of. So it's okay to turn it off, and then if you want them to take pictures, oh, here's a camera. Here's a GPS. Here's a whatever. You're handing them a specific thing. So you could easily turn it off. In the older version, it's like that. Going fast here. Guided access, for those of you who raised your hands with younger kids, and even middle schoolers. Guided access, again, is an Apple-only thing. They have it hidden in settings. I'll show you where it is in a second. But what guided access does is brilliantly locks that device, whether it's an iPad or iPhone or old iPhone, on the one app. So if you want your child to do math facts, and you downloaded a really cool Math Splash app, but every time you walk out of the room, they're playing a different game, you could lock it on that one app, and then for a time limit, for 20 minutes, you're going to do math, and then when you're done, then you could watch YouTube, or then you could play Roblox or whatever. But it locks it on that one app. It's called guided access. And there's a time limit. And it clicks down and it gives them, and then the parent has to come over and put in that 4-digit code that they can't know and you can't forget. And it works really well. Older middle schoolers, every time they go up to take a shower, they have to listen to music. But when they're up there listening to music, they're also texting and doing all kind of other things. And so the shower takes 4 hours. You can lock it on music. And so it becomes an iPod. Right? They can listen to music. They want to listen to me, great. But they're not doing 8 other things all at once. Because when you're multitasking, as I said earlier, you're not really multitasking. You're shifting your attention back and forth, and the cost is more time and mediocre performance. But it takes more time to shift back and forth. So this makes it one task. You're guiding them to that one access point. So if you're looking for where it is, it's under General. Again, you have a link on this, on that reference sheet. General, it goes accessibility, then learning, and then you turn it on, and then you'll set it up, and then it's basically a triple click to turn it on, and then you could set time limits there. This is kind of how it looks on the phone. Once you triple click, you could then hit start, and then this is a music app, the music app that I had, and then again, you could change it, go back and forth, change the album, and under options there, you could set other time limits. So if you wanted to change it to 20 minutes or an hour, you could change it right from there. Okay?
The settings lets you choose the app, or you
It's whatever app that is open. It locks it on. So once you set it up, you go into the app, in this case music, you triple click, and then you hit start, and it's locked on that one app. Brilliant. Circle, some of you, I brought a couple of slides. For the non-Apple, but includes Apple, any wireless device in your house, Circle is the one third-party software that I do recommend. It goes on the adult phone. It's a little white box that attaches to your home router, and you create these little profiles, and it gives you tremendous remote control access to the devices, all of the wireless devices in the house, including Xbox. They have a Fortnite thing that you could set up all through Circle. You could turn things on and off pretty easily. Again, you could have this in addition to the family sharing, is what I would recommend, or if you don't have the patience to set all that up, at least in the house, this would streamline it all, and it works pretty well. I talk to their engineers all the time. They're nice people out of Oregon, and they're really working on this to make it something that is really workable. As many of you are probably wondering, if it's only within the house, connected to your home network, for the older kids who have phones with their own phone number, they have 2 data access points when you have a phone. The Wi-Fi and the data from the phone number, right? So this Circle only controls the Wi-Fi. If you pay $5 a month, Circle Go gets attached, and then it follows it through the cell tower. Circle Go, okay? And this is kind of how it looks. It's an app and a little white box. They sell it at Target and Best Buy and on the internet, meetcircle.com. And again, this is my daughter's Chromebook. So even Chromebooks, when they're doing homework, it basically counts down. You can set a bedtime. And she knew she only had 40 minutes to go before that computer was going to go off. She needed to finish her homework. So it helps with that regulation piece. Please.
So Circle is good for, like, I have Apple, my son has an Android tablet. So
It would cover all of it.
All of it.
Yeah, which is why I include it. I've tested tons of these third-party apps. They all sound amazing. Some of them work. Some of them work so well that at least for a digital immigrant, it's impossible. It locks down the phone, and I can't figure out how to. And I tend to try. At least I try to be pretty savvy. Some of them I had to talk to the owners and say, I can't recommend this. It doesn't work, or it works too well, and it's above me. So Circle is easy to set up and works, and they have very helpful customer service.
Tablets for Amazon Fire also work.
Any wireless device that's connected to the home router. Yep. I have an online course that goes through all of this. I'm in the process of updating it. So if you were to purchase it, for as long as I'm doing this, 2.0 will be included, so you don't have to worry about rebuying it. No pressure at all, but I created the online course because I had so many questions, and I go through this so quickly, it's impossible to cover it all, even in a 2-hour workshop as tonight, and we're just about out of time. So 50% off, NANU at 50 is the code, iParent101.com is the website. Really fast, just to sort of sum up, I appreciate all these questions, by the way. I built this whole program from these questions as I've been doing this. I've lost track of how many I've done over the last 4 or 5 years, but I literally, every time I do this, I build these questions into the next workshop. So thank you. We're talking about proactive versus reactive parenting. We began with having clear expectations through the contract. We talked briefly about setting up enforceable limits through using parental controls, through the family sharing, through the screen time, through Circle. And now we're going to talk about creating these digital access boxes where you're attending to the positive behaviors and offering new levels of access as the child demonstrates more appropriate, age-appropriate behavior over time. What I wrote down, I don't know if you can see it, it says future adult training. Our kids are future adults. I state the obvious a lot, but that's what we're talking about here. It's not just about giving it away. They have to be able to manage themselves. I've seen kids who have been sort of, allergies is the best analogy I could use. Over the years, I've worked with many guys who have very severe food allergies. I don't remember it when I was a kid, but I have so many guys that I work with where there's poison everywhere they go, and it's real. And their parents, for 18 years, did an amazing job keeping them safe. And then unfortunately, they go off to college, and it's a really scary world where if they go to a restaurant and cross-contamination, they could get really sick. And so I draw that parallel here because from my point of view, it's not just about